Hello and welcome to the editorial analysis of The Hindu. Today we shall be discussing the editorial of the 20th of April. So coming to the first article, humanize the law. Now the context here is with regards to the draft Indian Forest Act. This was the draft that was passed by the cabinet and this was highly criticized. So there are several issues that were there. There were several problems that were there in this draft Indian Forest Act. So those are the issues which have been discussed in this particular article. Now coming to the first issue is that of the colonial era laws. Now here you should know that India still has a plethora of such laws which are still applicable in India, but they belong to the colonial era. Now there is no point of these laws being continued in India because the intention of the colonial government and the objectives of the colonial government were totally different from the government today. So why is it that still such kind of laws are what are applicable in India? For instance, the Indian Forest Act that is being renewed or being amended here, that has been drafted here, is an act which still is continuing, is that of the year 1927. So this is again a colonial era legislation. You can well yourself imagine that what were the intentions of the colonial government. They wanted to use the forest as a means to extract revenue from them and take them to a foreign country. They were exploitative in nature, and these are not the intentions that the present government has, or for that matter an independent government in India has. So definitely this law was what was warranting an amendment, and it is a delayed amendment that is being planned, and in that case also the draft that has been made is what is not satisfactory. So that is the first issue. Next, what is important is the need or the demands that are there from a new law. Now, the demands from a new law primarily that the new law should first and foremost focus on expanding the Indian forests. Next, it should ensure the well-being of the traditional forest dwellers. And next, it should focus on the biodiversity in these landscapes. These are the demands that are arising from a new Indian Forest Act, and this is what the Forest Act has to cater. The draft Forest Act is what is falling short of these demands, is what has been discussed here. Next is a key word, and that is why I have picked it up here. This is community-led as well as scientifically validated conservation. Whenever you are writing about forests and forest conservation, try and use this word because this is a small word, saves onto the word limit but gives the complete idea. So the idea here is that our process of conserving our forests should be community-led. Time and again we are seeing articles that there is a tendency at present that a community-led forest development is not being envisaged, and this can be a question that is the conservation of forest, should it be a government-led conservation or should it be a community-led? So the idea here is, which is a successful model globally, is always a community-led forest conservation. Also, this should be scientifically validated. So that is another aspect of forest conservation which you should highlight and bring out in your answer. So please make a note of this particular keyword. Next, something that has been discussed here is with regards to India's forest cover. This is some data, some facts from the State of Forest report of the year 2017. Now, according to this particular report, the Indian forest cover is already very less. At least 1/3 of the forest of the area in the country should be forested, but this target is what has not been reached. That means 33% approximately should be forested, but that is not the target that India has reached. Here you should know that approximately 2.99% of the forest area of the geographical area in India is what is classified as very dense forest, and the remaining forest area, which is 21.54, is what is comprising of mainly open as well as moderately dense forest. So only 2.99, which is approximately 3% area, is what is very dense forest, and this is something that is a cause of concern. This forest, very dense forest cover, is what needs to be increased. So this is one challenge that India's forest cover is facing. Next, what you need to know is about the draft bill. Now, this draft bill has some shortcomings. It is largely very much about bureaucratic control of forests. It is about providing immunity for the actions such as use of firearm by personnel in forest, and this is why this is being envisaged as a draconian act, because a lot of power is what is being given to the police as well as the forest officials. It is something that is hardline policing approach is what is being reflected here, and they have also demanded in this particular draft, there has been a case for making infrastructure to detain and transport the accused and penal criminalize the entire communities through denial of access to forests for offences by individuals. So these kind of strict and stringent norms are what cannot be accepted in the present era. This is a democratic country. This is a country where the rights of the citizens are supreme. So in such kind of a country, how can we accept a law which is so stringent upon the rights is something that has been discussed in this particular editorial, and this draft of the Indian Forest Act is clearly that. So definitely it is an unacceptable law. Next, something that is very, very important is with regards to the importance of forests. Now, the importance of forests is what is there first and foremost to the Adivasis and the traditional forest dwellers. Definitely for them, forests are what are very important. But for the common citizens of India, also forests have a huge importance. Forests have a role on impacting the climate and monsoon in the country. They have other benefits to the citizens of India. They provide an area of peace to the citizens of India. They provide fresh air to the citizens of India. They provide biodiversity benefits to the citizens of India. So for the importance of forests is something that cannot be undermined. They are highly important. So that is one analysis which you need to bring out. Next is the issue of scientific evaluation, and this is something that is important, as I had discussed above also, that the need is of a scientifically validated conservation. Now here what has been discussed in the editorial is that for long the forest officials are restricting a scientific evaluation of forests and forest conservation processes, and the need of the hour is that this kind of a restriction is what is done away with, and scientific evaluation of the conservation and forest health is what is allowed. So that is one analysis which has been brought about. Next, what has been discussed is the issue of public scrutiny. Now, something very, very important here is that on issues of forest conservation, public scrutiny is something that is weakened. Some decisions which are taken on diversion of forest land, in such cases the public scrutiny is what is very, very important. This we had discussed under the Forest Rights Act also, that through the Gram Sabha such kind of issues were discussed, but this scrutiny in implementation is what is very weak, and this is what needs to be increased. Next is the issue, next issue that has been discussed is of the impact assessment reports. Now here the editorial is discussing that several impact assessment reports are which come into which are discussed and which are made annually vis-a-vis forest and diversion of forest lands. But what is happening is that these impact assessment reports are largely being called as a farce, that these are largely a farce and nothing major is what is coming out from the impact assessment reports, and nothing much is coming in public domain. So these assessment reports are failing to perform their function or perform the need that for which these assessment reports were developed. So this is another criticism that we can bring about vis-a-vis the management of Indian forests. So this is an important article. It has multiple points. It is multi-dimensional, and this is how your answer should also be. It should cover various aspects. So that is why this particular article becomes important. In a short article, a lot of analysis is what is given vis-a-vis the Indian forest. So that is going to be the relevance. It is going to be important for the environmental side of your paper in mains in the general studies paper 3. So that is the relevance of this particular article. Coming to the next article, this is not an important article, largely because this is an article that is first and foremost a person specific as well as political party specific. But there is one point that can be extracted from this. Particularly, first and foremost, you should know the context of this article. Here, a candidate named Pragya Singh Thakur has been fielded by the political party, the ruling government political party, that is the BJP. Now, first and foremost, you should know that in UPSC mains answers, please try and avoid using any name. Always address a person as a third person rather than giving a particular name. It is not considered a good practice. Also, at large, you should try and avoid using names, or for that matter, person-specific analysis is what you should not give. UPSC will never welcome a political analysis, so please avoid that. Now, what has happened in this particular case is that this candidate has been charge sheeted or has been held as the prime accused or prime conspirator in the 2008 blast at Malegaon. So terrorist activity is what is seen against this particular candidate. So this is an issue of criminalization of politics. What is important in this particular case is that the case that is there that has been registered against this person is a very strong case. It is about the national security. So this is what is the criticism, and that is why why this particular article has been written. The first part of this article is what is not relevant, because this is a political analysis. But what is important is the question of criminalization of politics. This is something that is a problem in India. There is a high percentage of criminalization of politics in India. And if you have an opportunity to discuss this topic, this can be one example. You can just simply say that recently in the elections of 2019, recently in the 2019 elections, a major political party fielded a candidate who had credentials of terrorist activity. So this is the way you have to present it in your answer. This is how you can use it as a fodder material for your answers as an example. But one important aspect that has been discussed here is with regards to the election commission or the election law in India. Now you should note that at present, criminal charges are something that are not a basis for disqualification. Only if a person is accused and finally held guilty by the competent courts, then the person is debarred from fighting elections. But simply framing of charges is not a ground for disqualification. Now here the analysis is that first and foremost, this should not happen, that simply by a person being accused of a particular criminal charge should not be a ground for disqualification. That is what has been taken as a stand in this particular article also. This is primarily because if this happens, then there is a huge scope that false criminal charges will be implemented for people, and as a result of which they will be barred from fighting election. So this can act negatively. This could happen in a vindictive regime where means are found to ensure that people are disqualified. So for this reason, simply accusing a person or simply charges are being levied against a person, that is no grounds for disqualification. But if the person has been charge sheeted by a competent court, then that is ground enough for disqualification, is what is being advocated here. So if you have an option to discuss or an opportunity to discuss in your answers that at what stage a disqualification in criminalization is what should take place, so you should also hold this opinion that it should take place at a point where charges of what have been framed by a competent court. After that, a person should be disqualified from fighting a particular election. So that is what we can extract from this particular discussion. And these are the only two articles for today. The other articles are related to internal politics of Pakistan. This I would not suggest. Nowhere a question will give you enough scope to discuss that what is the financial situation and the finance politics that is going on in Pakistan. You will not have that opportunity to discuss in UPSC, so there is no relevance of that particular article, and that is why I have eliminated it from today's discussion. So that's about our discussion today. Please take a look at our batches. We are starting an IAS prelims revision batch from the 20th of April. So all those of you who are interested, please do get in touch with us. And that's about our discussion today. Thank you all for watching the video.